Yep. To disturb anyone else. All right, great. So it is November 26th, 2018. We are here at the policy committee meeting. It is approximately 1:33. We have everyone in attendance. Mr. Sirota is on his way. Are there any announcements or communications today? No. We have minutes from our last policy committee meeting back on October 22nd. If there's any modifications to those, please let Brooke know. Otherwise, they will be on the slate to be approved at our next legislative committee meeting. So first, we have some policies up for second reading and adoption. I'm going to start with the 600s on here, move it around slightly in case any community members come to discuss the policy, not policy, local board procedure 006. So we have 616 we can start with. Are there any changes from anyone on the committee? Just 616?
What do we do with
616.
We'll wait on 006 for a moment until Mr. Sherrod is here. Sorry.
No changes for 6 and 6.
Okay. And these are second reading policies. So, all right. So 616, that will go for second reading and adoption. The next one is 621.
16, there's no administrative rights, right?
No, there's not. There is no AR. So 621. Any changes?
Is there an arrow there? I mean, where is the building? Where is the taxpayer
It's
building?
in the next, it's in the next section.
I have it in the review section because we haven't looked at it before, and I believe it's new, isn't this correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have it on the review section.
Yeah.
Sorry, but
Okay.
So it's going to be
Yeah.
621, the AR will be 621. So we can,
Perfect. And that's all the stuff that's being struck out here. It's being moved into the AR. More of us.
Yeah, I didn't.
all right, yeah, let's do those, yeah.
do you want to do this together?
Yeah, let's do those together.
So,
Let's look at the AR then.
It's pretty short, it's mostly.
It's extremely short, it says, here's the attachments.
Well,
Maybe the
you
section.
get to open
Alright, let's open it.
office editing for docs, sheets,
Which attachments are in?
it's in Word, office. I'll notify you in writing.
I mean, is there a reason to do these as attachments instead of just putting, like, at least the first one, you're entitled to receive a written explanation of your rights, just in the body of the AR specifically?
Well, you're saying, do you need attachments at all, or?
Like the first attachment one. Can we just put that in the body itself, or?
Well, don't you want to have forms so that it's not just, it doesn't have to.
Create your own,
Yeah, it's just, that's what they're there.
fill them out.
It's how we grow the other forms. You don't want to, I guess the more license you give to, or the less precision you give the staff on how to, on what to do and how to comply with something, the more chance you get for lack of uniformity and not complete compliance. So They're gonna be passing these things out.
Okay, so essentially, we're just putting them in there so they can be stapled together or emailed to someone.
Yeah.
Email.
Right.
So my earlier question was in regards to the policy originally written, where it's being, in the red, where it's being struck through right now. That language more or less is being adopted into these documents as attachments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one clarification.
Yeah, we'll probably just need to modify these so that they're in the PDF form instead of the doc form, if we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it on the laptop. No.
Commas that'll add, like a comma and. consistent.
We had chairs set up for.
I can get it.
She can do some of those chairs.
I can get it.
Comfy chair.
What if
In case we have others.
Yeah.
Public that ends up attending.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So another question, bit of clarification, since this was brought up at the legislative meeting by the taxpayer who had the issue, I'm assuming then it's this attachment 2 that that individual would have followed to appeal the lateness of his fee?
No,
No, that's
that's
a
not a
different-
different policy, that's policy,
623.
yeah, it's called tax waiver request.
Okay.
That's a discretionary thing, that's a policy the district isn't even obligated to have.
I see.
Well, it looked like there wasn't necessarily anything in policy from that to,
Yeah, that's what.
there wasn't a procedure laid out, it was just that you could file a complaint, but there wasn't like a form or anything like that.
No.
in our-
So when is this one used? 621.
621,
Taxpayer bill of rights.
It really came into effect with EIT.
Mm.
if there's a mistake, it's only if there's a mistake.
Right.
This is if there's an actual mistake in your taxes as opposed to, my dog ate my homework and I
Right.
liked.
Right, I see.
I see.
And it permits people to, and things have changed since we first adopted previously. Now, all the EIT is coordinated by the county, so part of it used to be done by school districts, at least regarding earned income taxes, taken care of at the county commission.
So when is this used currently?
Which
Two.
attachment are you referencing?
What's
Which
down
attachment?
621?
The policy.
When is 621?
Somebody.
Somebody calls up
Somebody
and
was-
says,
The thing is, when somebody makes a mistake, if there's an actual mistake on the taxes.
On the bill that comes to the home?
Mhm.
Can you open it up? I'm in trouble.
I mean,
Which one would you like me
They
to?
are attachment 3. Or, I'm sorry, no, attachment 4, attachment 4. Where your farm comes in, country school. She does. Specific eligible taxes, so that's transfer tax and earned income tax. That's not the
So
real, not the
real
not the
estate
real
tax.
estate tax.
Okay.
So keep going, keep going. Tax waiver, designation of tax bill. So for example, let's suppose tax collector, the earned income tax collector takes the position that something that you did was considered income subject to the taxes. And you didn't make-
Berkheimer.
Yeah, and suppose that you were the taxpayer, and you're like, that's not, no, that doesn't That's not earned income again, according to the law, and Berkheimer disagrees with you.
Oh,
Now you have a right to appeal that,
oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
And you appeal it to whom?
according to whatever this says. There has to be a mechanism by which there's real estate tax isn't really, if your assessment's correct and the millage is, mathematically applied, there's no ground for error there. There could be a difference in legal opinion on what constitutes an eligible tax for anything.
Mhm.
Or you transfer tax if you felt that something should have been exempted. Although there's also a different procedure for that.
Right.
Like, this is, how many times has this been invoked? Probably in the last 5 years, probably there's been 0.
And you're absolutely correct. And in fact, last time, this has not been invoked since I've been in Upper Dartmouth, this particular.
And I'm not aware of that's been invoked anyway. Where you may see it is that
As I stated previously, before we went to countywide EIT collection, and some districts such as Upper Dublin Township collected the EIT. And then sometimes you would see appeals, challenges based on different forms of income you hit it with. And if some people might use losses in a particular subchapter to offset. So I'm getting very technical, but. Certainly since it's become countywide collection through Berkheimer, there's not been any questions.
there was one, I'm only aware of one error that occurred, it went up to Commonwealth Court. That was it.
We're looking at the 621 specifically, there's the new AR with all the different attachments on it.
Okay.
It's fine with me.
Yep.
No, no.
You're good? Okay. So 621 will go for second reading and adoption, and the new AR will go for approval. So we'll go to 622 then, which is the gas fee, 34.
Yes.
And this also has a new AR, so we can do that at the same time. All right, so were there any changes to the policy itself, 622? From the first reading? All right. Yeah.
The dollar amounts, I think we may have discussed the last time.
Policy or?
Actually, there's one in the policy as well.
Yeah, it's in the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both was in policy.
Right, waiting for you to say that.
Yeah, we had the number in this was 5,000, changed from 2,500.
Correct.
Mhm. How often does it change?
It hasn't, this is the first change since
Since-
SB 34. went
Which is
into-
why it was probably in policy, not
Correct.
AR.
Mhm.
All right, according to law.
That's the regular. Great. So the number's only going to go up, so.
Right. don't necessarily anticipate a change anytime soon.
Actually, there may be, because Gatsby's writing a policy and making changes regarding leasing, so we may be revisiting this sooner than what we might like. But as far as the dollar amounts, I don't think the capitalization will change.
So, all right. All right, so if the AR is, or that policy, I don't think we have any changes to that. Is there any changes to the AR? Since this is a new AR, it gives a lot more details.
I have a practical question,
Okay.
nothing about wording, but the very last thing in the AR, under repairs and maintenance, says that extraordinary repairs extending the useful life. Who makes that determination? How is that determination made?
I think, isn't any repair greater than 5,000?
Oh, is it as simple as that?
Yeah,
I think
it's
so.
5,000.
We don't really.
Extending the life beyond 1 year. So
It's
take out
really
the
the
word,
combination of the two. It's the dollar amount extending the life of the asset more than 1 year.
right,
So sometimes extending the life of an asset more than 1 year may be more than $5,000.
Right.
So we should take out the word extraordinary in the first
just
sentence.
repairs.
Just say repairs greater than 5,000. And then in the next sentence.
Well, I think that's meant to differentiate it from routine.
Routine
That's
repairs,
why
you're right.
Routine repairs
Yeah.
should say other repairs.
Okay.
All right, with those changes, are we good? Do you want to start? Good. All right, you good? Okay. All right, so that's 622, with the policy and the AR. What's our meeting December 10th? All right, so we have to 626. This is just the policy and there's not a new AR to go along with that.
Is there a separate policy on travel reimbursement not having to do with federal grants? Should we do that?
This policy was set into play when it was required for the title or for the federal funds. And actually, we will be discussing reimbursement for employees under the 300
Yeah,
later today. So
yeah, 331.
this is specific to federal,
Right.
which we seldom use because our federal funds are encumbered and used in other ways.
There's so many of them.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll go to 626. There's not much changes, all right. You good with that? Yeah. And then we have 917.
So what's the story with the optional parts that we still see in board docs? Is that something for us to discuss now,
Those were, they were given to the administration. And so,
And they're all,
Yeah,
and the ones-
there was one change that was made in here.
okay, so the ones that
That are listed,
are in here,
right, Kathy Smythe and Kim Weiner reviewed,
so
so they
they
could review them now.
so we can take out the those
Parentheses.
parentheses.
Yeah.
But,
It was just for us to know, I guess, that this is,
okay.
So all this green is new and in here? The ones in those weird parentheses have been added? What?
They were all options.
They were,
What's
yeah,
options mean?
Under Title I, that you
First
you
reading.
could select saying that's what
the
you.
first reading they were there. Also.
Right.
I didn't compare the exact wording, but just a quick eyeball.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah.
So they were new.
The whole thing, all the green.
All the
So all green is new.
All the green,
That's all it
yeah.
is, okay. And it's only policy. It's all in policy.
Just check, make sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Is Bruce, should all this be in policy? Seems mighty lengthy.
It can be, it doesn't have to be.
So I would feel more comfortable if it's all in policy. We've had fairly good federal program audits in the district, but they're always looking for things to, give you recommendations on. And one of the recommendations, if your policy isn't robust enough, they'll ask for the policy to be reviewed. So I think we might as well just leave it in, all the same policies, and then that way we're covered.
I do have a question about Title. Title I / parent / guardian seems,
I think we decided to do that as sort of like the way we're wording things now, isn't that correct? Just to keep with our style guide, if you will.
I feel like that's the question.
Right?
First slash,
the first three things, those three things are not all, interchangeable.
No, it should be, it should be, well, instead of saying.
Title I.
copy, I would
Well,
just
yeah.
say Title I,
Yeah.
colon. Yeah. I would change that backslash to a colon.
Okay,
first one.
that makes sense.
That's actually a forward slash.
Oh, I see what you meant. Sorry, I mistyped there, probably, yeah. There we go. Okay.
Mhm.
Can hear it.
I mean, it does seem though that the policy exudes that there should be an attached AR because there's so much spelled out in this. So I think you can keep some of the language, but I think there might need to be the creation of an AR regardless though.
Well, what would need to be in the, would you take some of this to put in the area?
I'd target some of it because some of it's pretty technical, but maybe not the high level.
Sure.
So-
Yeah, we can take, I can work with Dr. Meyer, I can look and move some of it to an hour.
Okay, so we'll pass it as policy, so we have it in writing,
Yep.
and then we can,
Yeah, it's fine. Then we'll bring it back for a
yeah,
preview or a review.
yeah.
Everyone.
All right,
Oh, so we want to do this.
so we'll do a second reading on it, and we'll adopt it, and then we can make some changes, so we do have a more robust policy. Mark, did you have anything for 616?
660.
Would that be that for you? Yeah.
No, I have nothing for 660.
Okay, great. All right, and then we hadn't discussed 006 yet, I'm gonna wait until we're here for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So of course, 006 is our local board decision. And we're looking at the two changes here, and this was something we obviously discussed, this is going to be a change for the, our board meetings. I think that some of the, one of the things when we talk about action items, and we're defining that so that it is on the agenda. It says for a board vote, and we want to make sure that this should include a presentation or something, like even for I mean, if a presentation is not going to be voted on, we're discussing it at the meeting. Do we want that to be included in what people can comment on in the first section? I would think so. I mean, that's part of it, is that public input is after the presentations. So maybe that needs to be,
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think the purpose of the recommendation is to maximize the effectiveness of the board by getting to the meat of the meeting and getting that over with before we talk about other things. I mean, maybe make the case that the presentation should be after the.
Right, because the presentations do
the,
take,
Yeah, the presentations may not need to be before the action items. The action items really very rarely take any significant period of time, but the presentations do.
right.
And first member input does. So if the purpose is to get the board business done quickly, then I would suggest, and I think it addresses a lot of the concerns that people have, is to do that first. So member input on those items, and then action items, then presentations, then second.
Well, a lot of the times the presentations are something that we're going to vote on, of course, right?
Yeah,
Not
so
always.
that's true. Yeah, so
Yeah,
then-
but a lot of the time, if we're gonna have a presentation, I mean, of course, there's like the budget presentations where we're presented it and we're not actually doing any action item in
Right.
March, you know, but.
Or I'm thinking about like on the 10th,
Mhm.
oh no, I'm sorry, Education Committee, we're doing a data presentation. But, you know, for example, on the 10th, we talked about this morning in Cabinet, looking at the school calendar and some of the concerns, community concerns, teacher concerns, administrative concerns about the number of half-days in our calendar. We'd like to make some changes for next year. And so we thought to actually discuss that in public at a legislative meeting so that everyone's on the same page. Knowing that the calendar wouldn't then be up for approval until the January legislative meeting.
So is it a reasonable idea to have two presentation segments, one that leads to action items, one that pertains to action items at today's meeting, and one that is for future consideration?
I'm trying to think of something that we would present on and ask the board to approve the same evening.
Well, PineCon and budget.
PlaneCon, yeah.
PineCon and budget.
But yeah, no, I'm thinking other than,
Those presentations could be done actually as part of the action item, even not as a presentation.
Right, I mean, I think usually we do it because if we have, especially with the outside people coming in, you know, like we have a third party coming in, they could do it at the beginning, they know what time to start
Right.
versus.
Yeah, like,
But
sitting
the,
there,
you
yeah.
know, that's generally the action items take, 15 minutes or whatever it takes.
Yeah, the agenda, so,
Yeah. So, I don't see that as a big delay for that purpose. I just think if we're honest about the purpose of this change, and I think it really is the purpose of the change, to get our board business done quickly and efficiently, and maximize its effectiveness by allowing us the time to discuss and not pushing it late so we all just want to go home already. All the decisions should be made with that in mind. And that means that the long presentation should also be after. The long presentations that don't pertain to an action item should also be after the.
after the,
It would be same amount of time before the second community input will occur.
Yeah.
So what's the difference if it's,
well, yeah, I
if
mean.
it's first or?
So I think the things with
after the agenda
presentations,
items?
well, I think for me, like when we do a presentation, like we have an opportunity as board members to then interact with whoever's doing the presentation, right? And so I think it makes sense to have a community input close in time to the item that we've just discussed, right? So if we had it at the beginning, say we have a presentation and we're limiting community input to something that, because we're not voting on it that night, we limit that community input even though we've had our chance to discuss it with whoever's there. It also, I think, would require, if we keep the presentation, the presenter, would we require them to stay
Right.
until the community input at the end,
Right.
you know? So, I mean, I think it's I think that if it's important enough that we're doing a presentation at the meeting, I think that it makes sense to get community input to that presentation. It's just a matter of, if we're gonna not allow it at the beginning, then we're gonna hold the presenter, are we gonna hold the presenters after the end of the action items?
Mhm.
Which we could do that.
Well, I think in
too.
general, if it's not related to an action item, most of the time it's going to happen in a committee meeting and not a legislative. There are certainly times when it doesn't, just because the schedule works out that way, like we've had PFF come in and the legislative instead
We
of.
still may have a bridge data
Finance.
presentation at a legislative meeting.
sure. Yeah, but the bulk of it like the heavy lifting would be done at the education committee. I could see us though,
Right.
for example, because with the new tools that are out there that we're having analyzed for data, this year, one of the things in my weekly update to the board will be that we'll do like the bulk of the presentation at education, but then we'll do a brief follow-up, like here's what we're doing to correct or to change the trajectory of how, kids are performing.
So in your opinion, should community input, and that first community input be permissible for presentations?
I mean, if it's something that, yeah, I mean, I think if we think it's that important
Mhm.
that we're going to present on it,
Right.
I think, especially if it's something major,
Right.
I don't see it usually doesn't take that long. I mean, the argument is presentations take long, but most often the comments about the presentations are not.
Well, I think we have to have, not to sound sexist, but a gentleman's agreement that when we do presentations at a legislative meeting, that they should not be long, laborious presentations,
Right.
because we have committee structure where that can be done, right?
I'll agree with that.
We have agreed to that in the past.
Right. So I
Sometimes it
think,
wasn't help, but.
right, but I think, like, if we're gonna do an abridged version of the data presentation, or okay, here's the data, what now?
Right.
I think that we could say, we're going to keep that to about 10 minutes.
10 to 15.
Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes, no longer than that, because that's not the only topic for the night. And knowing that we will do a very extensive presentation, at committee, where we can actually be a little bit more informal and answer questions, as they come up.
So then you recommend, so Sarah, I think we should have community input on presentations.
Right, that's what I think too. I mean, what I would have in this, for the public participation for this first one, action item only, and I mean, maybe it's, in presenting comments or in reaction to presentations or whatever. I mean, it should be, to me, not just action items, or it's
Right.
redefining action items into action items include,
I think if I could just jump in here, I think we're all dancing delicately around the topic. And I just want to put, the elephant on the table a little bit. So I think when we have major things going on in the district, Field of Dreams being one of them, transportation at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
When we had a board retreat, I guess about a month ago, with the CCIU, they, one of the things that they suggested is that when there is a big item that could create controversy, and I'll use the transportation at the beginning of the year. So there was about 45 minutes or an hour of, work that. I think hindsight's 20/20, and here's what I learned from that. We probably should have had a separate, apart from a meeting, we should have said, listen, we realize there's concerns about transportation. We're gonna set up this meeting, you can come and air your concerns. And that, when it's not done in the formality of a regular board meeting, we can be a little bit more informal, where there could be, some dialogue going back and forth, because we were able to rectify those transportation issues, but we had to wait till that we waited until that legislative meeting.
right, we need to have special public meetings when there's issues that come up.
Right. Like, for example, again, hindsight's 20/20, but Field of Dreams probably should have been, here's a community forum, we have to make the case that we either need or don't need a bus, transportation garage, and gone through a couple steps, and then, even if we got to the point where we're still on the Fields of Dreams, people might not agree, but at least people, can have their, input. Because, I mean, when there's nothing super controversial, the number of people at public comment are 3 or 4. Right? But I think the district, we would serve our community better, I'm speaking administratively, is when we have those big things, like we changed some middle school bus routes today. And I said to Brendan in an email, if there are multiple problems, then I think pretty quickly, we need to have Chris Robbins set up a meeting where parents can come and discuss those concerns, so that they don't have to wait until the 10th of December. They're welcome to come, but if there's a problem, I'd rather be able to help with a problem now than wait until December 10th.
So what's the
Exactly.
process by which one of those special meetings gets set up? Because usually it's not, well, when those big things happen, it's not that we plan for it to happen.
Right.
Most of the time.
Well, I think, well, so, the answer to that question is proper planning would actually mean that, like, so for example, well, the non-public transportation this year, I think, became, there was a snowball effect, you know, but I think, you know, perhaps, I'll use transportation, maybe there needs to be a transportation meeting at the end of the summer where parents can come and ask their questions to Chris, you know, that, rather than, you know, because they'll email Chris or they'll email me and then emails wind up getting crossed,
Right.
you know.
And transportation's a recurring.
Right, transportation, right, like.
Yeah, that one's
It's
not.
At the beginning of every school year, at the end of every summer, we know where to
It's
have
not always
transportation
not public, you know,
concerns.
the
Exactly.
issues
Yeah, always
different
concerns.
times.
Exactly.
Or something.
And I'm not talking about doing like task forces, but what I'm talking about is like setting, like, okay, here, we either have this issue that is completely blown up, and we need, you know, people either need to have their cathartic moment, we need to get input or whatever, or, hey, we're going to enact something that, you know, fundamentally changes how we do business.
Let's have a special meeting about.
Let's have a special meeting about that one topic.
Right.
So for example, I don't remember what year it was, 2015 or whatever, 2014, we were in negotiations and we had a whole army of people
15,
come.
February 15.
15. Would you have a special meeting about topics like that are really not public
Not
discussion? Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
You're so limited by what you can talk about.
Yeah.
You know.
That's what I mean.
Can't say anything
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
all
and
the one
that
way.
was different. I mean, that was a reason people were coming for a specific thing, coming to the, I don't know. I mean, that's not the same type of special issue that.
Right, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
but that took
It's a
an hour and a half
protest.
or 2 hours of public comment, and how, you know,
I
I'm
think-
wondering if that mechanism actually works for a situation.
I think what I'm trying to get after, I've had a couple people reach out to me with some concerns about this, and I think that some people might believe, and I hope not, but I think some people might believe what we're trying to do is quelch the community voice, and that's, like, one of the things that I heard loud and clear through the interview process and through the onboarding process was that there hadn't been a lot of communication in the district, right? And so my thing is, I went into this really with what I'm going to consider good intentions of saying, how can we take care of problems either before they become problems or in the moment, you know? Because it bothered me that kids were in, you know, some transportation situations for, you know, a couple weeks into the school year. Had we known, I think going into that meeting, we knew of 3 or 4 kids that had major transportation issues that we were able to fix. Had I known about those other issues before, you know, we would have had to have people come out and kind of spend a whole night waiting to talk about transportation. But negotiations is one of the things that, I mean, we're so hammered on what we can say publicly because.
We're negotiating something.
Right.
I think that wasn't, the purpose wasn't
Right.
to address the board, the purpose was to address the board and the folk that were watching the meeting.
Yeah, that was different.
Sometimes the legislative meeting is not the best venue if there are issues. to bring them up at
It's
that
usually not the best, yeah.
That's the point. I mean,
Yeah.
if there are issues at that point, there's a problem. It should have been held.
Right, which is what we're trying to avoid, having special meetings and forums can avoid.
Right, but I think we have to help the community understand that.
Right.
They will be listened to at multiple points, not just
Right.
as the legislative meeting. You know, because there will always be people that come to a legislative meeting and stand up to air whatever grievance they have, right? But if that is the only venue, if that's the message that we send, if that's the only venue where we, you know, thoughtfully listen to, you know, people's concerns, then people feel that that is their only recourse.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's exactly my point. I think if we want the legislative meeting to be really effective as a legislative meeting, we don't want this to happen at the beginning of it. You know,
right, and so that's what I think that changing how we're defining public participation in the first one, I think it makes sense when we understand what the other things that we're gonna do, that goes hand in hand. If you're saying, we're just gonna limit this, and we're not gonna have special meetings, we're not gonna have town halls, we're gonna limit it, then, you know, I can see, where people might feel that we're just trying to limit input or, you know, that. But the intent here is not to, and I think it makes sense to have, you know, then have the meetings go quickly through the action items and all of that. But I think it's gonna be important to stress that we're not cutting this and not replacing it with something else. I think that the idea is we are
I love
replacing
the
it.
idea of replacing, you know,
Yeah.
having town halls or some other forum. I just would like the legislative meetings to be able to be focused on the action items, and we can have real discussions about the action items. And when it gets to be 11 PM, nobody wants to have a discussion. So that's, you know, that to me is the problem we're trying to solve.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, I view really the committee meetings that we have as really where we should be getting, like, to the heart of the matter, right? You know, one of the things that when you look at how any number of districts do their voting meeting or legislative meeting, whatever they call it, there's a whole host of ways that that's done. Some districts do consent agendas, some meetings are really long. I think, you know, I would like to see us have the discussion, the wrestling with issues, the you know, the input at the committee level, because that's where we can actually, I really think, make some traction and help things before they blow up. Because for example, had some parents come out, if parents weren't happy about transportation and they weren't getting satisfaction with Chris and with Brenda and with me, had they come to operations, right? I could have helped, or we could have helped fix the transportation problems 2 weeks earlier than what they were, right? And so that's where I'd rather see people,
Me too.
you know.
And unfortunately, with transportation at the beginning of the year, our legislative meeting was also a week later due to the
Right.
holidays. So, and I'm not sure if we're going to be able to address all of the transportation at the committee meeting
Oh, of course.
in August.
Right.
But for example, we've changed, as you shared, a number of runs today, and a lot of people have been told that we are having a community meeting operations, you know, this week. Haven't been too many calls or problems that I'm aware of yet, but that has been shared that we would be having a committee meeting this Thursday.
Mhm.
And just FYI, Chris has been put on notice to be there on December 15th.
Right.
So, I guess what I would like to do is make sure that in the change that we're doing is to make this change and have the first public participation also include the presentations. But other than that, you know, making this change.
So you would want to say, under public participation, comments and questions on action items and presentations only.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
For taxpayers.
Tonight's presentation.
yeah,
Not evenings.
yeah, whatever, yeah, to clarify, we're talking about that.
Yes.
So start up
Not a
comments,
presentation that
questions,
took place 40
comments,
years ago.
Any questions? Any questions, it's not. okay.
Yeah. Fix it later, sorry.
Comments and questions regarding action items, excuse me, comments and questions regarding that this, let's say this, regarding, let's say, action items and presentations on the on that meeting's agenda. Okay, make that, we'll move the only to the where people comments.
So we're at the beginning.
Correct. That's small c. Only comments and questions How about, for taxpayers and residents, I don't make comments and questions.
So put it,
Yeah,
Where?
comment I can put at the beginning. I'm gonna say for non-district student, taxpayers and residents only. District's capitalized.
student,
District students and taxpayers, comma, only comments and questions regarding the agenda. For district students.
This, but for non-district students, and, well, you need residents in there too, don't you?
Okay, for none.
Comma.
That's it, for district residents and taxpayers.
yeah,
Take the word non.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
And
for
for
district
residents,
residents.
residents, I don't think we need students there, do we?
Residents, comma, not including
We
students.
don't.
Well, that would be a that would be a
Yeah.
hypothetical if we were gonna have it.
Yeah, just, I would just say district residents and taxpayers.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry, can I review?
I was gonna say recognitions and presentation should be separate.
Is,
No, I'm about it, in the,
right.
Oh, there should be separate items?
yeah, they should be lumped together.
Is the welcome, the SGA report and the superintendent's report, those are not presentations, just to be clear?
Well, we can define presentation.
What's happening?
Well, that's why presentation is a separate item.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that.
Because presentations are
And
actually
if we-
listed in the agenda. You know, recognitions and presentations.
Yeah. We can capitalize presentation.
So, it doesn't go here in procedure 006, but how do we publicize that our intention is to steer these comments?
I'm sorry, we're just got kind of jumbled.
Go ahead.
I don't know what happened, it's,
right,
I think funny.
I think it's probably fine that you put for district students comments, you can do that first. But I think for
Yeah, I kind of like
then,
that too.
okay, maybe for the board, period. Put a period after there, then put for other residents. And taxpayers. And you get space there. Comment, well, then you gotta move that, where you, comments and question, action items. Action.
I don't know what happened,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
got all,
Yeah.
yeah.
The other residents.
Yeah,
I'll
we're-
include
and I can do it.
residents.
Offline.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can
that's
fix it later, right, yeah, sorry.
Okay, as long as no one's gonna wanna tweak it anymore.
What I'll do is I will take that section out, put it in an email to the committee, and you can say whether that wording works for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd probably just add district before residents and taxpayers. So that's fine, it doesn't matter. We'll figure that out.
I'll work on it, yeah.
So.
Does that work for you?
Don't forget what the district area.
So it clearly doesn't belong here in board procedure 006, but how do we publicize that our intention is to steer these kinds of conversations to either committee meetings or special meetings of the board?
I mean, we just have to continue to get the message out through whatever means we're communicating.
And we'll announce it, I'll talk about it at the legislative meeting, you know, just like we brought attention to the fact that we're making this change in.
Right, and I'm not advocating for, 15 special meetings a year. I think with proper planning, it would only be for those, because think about what draws the most public comment is when there's a controversial decision that's being made.
Yeah.
So,
And actually, a lot of them really actually aren't even board topics, they're administration topics when these things happen.
agreed. Agreed. But I think,
Like, the board meeting isn't really the place, especially the legislative meeting, because it's not something for us.
But it's a
to-
public meeting, I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way to hold people accountable, it's a public meeting.
Yeah, I mean.
But I think, for example,
obviously
like,
it's legitimate,
like, let's say we're going to change the high school schedule, which we're not, by the way. And there should be a lot of information shared and input sought, because otherwise, if it just happens, that's when people feel blindsided.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Steve, I think you hit the nail on the head in regards to the concerns are really around communication. And so as long as we can communicate about the communication, that's one thing. But then the other part is just when the community itself has the full board's attention, or that the full board is actually convened together.
Sure.
And that they're able to simply address it. And for at least the general public, I think the only time that they can see that is the
It's
legislative.
legislative. Right, and I mean, that is one of the things that I had 4 people reach out to me specifically about this policy, and that's one of the things that was a common thread through their communication. They feel like that's the one time
Right.
that, that they can voice a concern, because all 9 were,
Yeah. The expectations were all there.
But I think to your point, Mark, stuff becomes a board issue because there's not the requisite planning to go into whatever the process is.
Yes, I mean, but-
And then it blows up.
Yeah, I mean, things like non-public transportation, like the board does, unless, we need more buses or
Mhm.
something like that, the board doesn't actually have any direct involvement in that. I mean, that's something that should never reach the board level in the first place, probably.
No, I mean, in a perfect world.
Yeah.
I mean, but there are always going to be people that know, even when you follow the steps of communication, there are still going to be people that don't like or are not satisfied with whatever answer, they're given.
Yeah, and then that's the accountability process, and bringing it to the board is fine, because that's the appropriate next step, but the previous steps, and that one didn't happen.
So we'll try this. And see, and hope that our communication is improved because we're doing other things, continued other things. I mean, I think we've taken some steps so far. Dr. Yanni has taken some steps so far. So, all right. So you'll wordsmith this a little bit.
I'm gonna send it to the committee, this section here, and for the community that's here, I will have that updated in board docs in the draft version. Yeah.
Just one thing, it is public participation, that comment,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
just in the rest of the poll.
Yeah, something happened, it like
Yeah.
jumped and
Yeah.
It won't.
Okay.
I pressed the control button.
All right. So that'll be kind for second. All right, so we can move on to the regular section. 322, gifts and discounts.
In 606, I just had, are we done? I have a question on 606.
The Wilson.
Yeah, that was it.
Yes.
That was it. With the elected public officials, we're not saying anything. We're saying
No.
they're encouraged to contact the board president.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to put in policy, but it's to address a situation that actually came up.
And if they don't, what action do we take?
They don't speak.
You know,
Not at public, no.
Then it's not encouraged, and it's
They're
required.
encouraged to contact the board president superintendent prior to the meeting to arrange for a designated time to speak. They wouldn't be speaking in public comment, they'd be speaking some other point in the agenda. The idea is to just not have anything ambushed.
Is that?
The idea is to just not, so you're not ambushed. it would be, it would be boorish for the district to not put on the agenda a sitting elected official who wants to speak about something that affects their constituents at a school board meeting.
Correct.
You're simply saying, we're going to allow that, just call us ahead of time, and we'll put you in the agenda in an appropriate place, which isn't public comment.
How would the person know?
How
would they know?
Yeah, how would they even know?
Sorry, we're still.
Because that's, I mean, they already know. That's just the right thing to do already.
They're not-
Well, that's, it's in policy.
And the
so
policy,
we have
they
it in
can read,
policy.
they can read the policy and say, this is for, residents and taxpayers, and I'm not allowed to speak that.
There's a
That couldn't happen.
There's a finite number of people that this will apply to, you just simply make them aware of it. I
Right.
think it only applies to
Only 2 people,
Well,
maybe 3, 4 actually.
four people.
Well,
I
and
guess
then
that
if the
makes sense.
governor,
Yes, the
or,
president.
yeah, we do a federal, yeah,
Most senators, US Congress,
yeah,
so I guess, but it's still a finite number of people that this will apply to.
right. So, and
But the word is encourage.
should,
That's not how you use it.
right, I mean, we could just say not encourage, should contact. In order to get on the agenda, you must
Right, and
contact,
then
must, yeah,
The
shall.
other thing is, it really should be the board president or the superintendent. Committee chairs, I think we need to know, and then reach out. I mean, if they just reach out to the committee chair, the committee chair needs to make sure that Dr. Yanni and the board president knows that what's coming.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So you
I think that would happen anyway,
You need to.
Well, currently it would, but, yeah.
Okay, did you get those changes? We're changing, I got them, if you want to just send it.
Okay.
I can put, you know what?
Are we
I
at
can make
this
those
one?
changes. Yeah, I can.
Yeah, 006.
It's
Oh,
double
that-
six,
yeah.
and then it's changing the word encourage, to changing.
Do we
Needs to
need
be
to
notified.
send this? Or second, first?
No, because these aren't,
Well,
yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
especially the,
You should include special
okay,
meetings.
so that's the first reading.
Back to first reading.
Yeah, you're right.
That's good, that gives more opportunity for the
If
community.
you wish to address the board at a regular, special, or committee meeting, as we differentiate between a special meeting and a board meeting, you should just
Right.
put special.
Okay, I'll make those changes.
Okay. All right. Now we good? All right. So now it's for first reading.
Wait,
Read.
there's just one more thing.
Okay.
I think, in the category that's called the regular meetings under A agenda, you're just missing the word TO. In the third sentence, shall be provided agenda, regular meetings,
Is this under note?
Be provided to each school director, right here.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's the word TO, I just forgot to tell you.
Yeah.
Under.
Someone should read that.
It's just,
All right. Oh, I know. There you go.
it's smaller and the edit field, so it's
Yep.
hard to find.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Anything else, Art?
No,
Okay. That's not a substantive change. That's. The other ones are, okay. So that takes us up to our review section. So, 322. So if you notice, we are morphing over to the personnel section. That's why HR is here, so.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'll take care of this.
Okay.
I'm just gonna add this, I don't forget.
And the 300s, 400, 500s, remember, are
They're
all
all-
divided into 300s now. So the 4s and 5s will go away.
We'll go away.
Is that pretty standard for us to say now?
ESG has been working on that for
That's what it is, yeah.
a long time. Because there's so much, there's so many duplicate things.
Yeah.
They were the exact same policy.
Policy, yeah.
It's just that they would change what the classification,
Okay.
so that'll decrease the size of the,
But that's reduced here.
well, I know.
So this is one
You
where
might pay for food for
where
everything.
the board stuff, the gifts and discounts, just to make statements about what the board can and cannot receive. Is that somewhere else?
Well,
This is for
three,
employees.
4s, and 5s, they're just employees.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this would only be employees and kids.
So I have a comment on the AR. I don't know if we're ready for the AR yet.
so,
I have a question on the policy, only in regards to the language. It
Yes.
seems as though the purpose and the authority almost seemingly contradict each other. One is saying it's an undesirable practice, and then we're saying if you do it, then here's kind of the guidelines. So I'm wondering if we can shore up the language on that. Because I think what we're trying to say is,
it's discouraged.
well, I think we're just trying to set guidelines to say, actually, I don't think, it is discouraged, but then when is it permitted?
Limited, yeah.
Yeah, and how do we then start?
And I think we need to be
Give
clear
it
that
back and forth.
this is like, just because you're an employee of the district, doesn't mean you can't get gifts from your family member. I mean, this is one of those things where
Exactly.
this is in relation to their employment,
Right.
instead of just receiving a discount.
Right, this is, I mean, this is basically, we shouldn't be taking, companies shouldn't be taking people out to dinner, those types of things. Like gifts from families should still be of a de minimis amount, you shouldn't be accepting a Coach bag or a car from a family.
I think, would it fix your
No,
concern?
I mean, but there are gifts that are given particularly to certain groups of employees
Sure.
at certain times of year, so I'm very interested in how, I'm listening to the conversation, because this may be a change.
Right.
Would it address your concern, Rob, if authority said something like, gifts and discounts below a certain threshold? Can't use that language, but what I'm trying to say is gifts and discounts below a certain threshold are not really considered gifts and discounts for the purposes of this policy.
I think the problem is in the characterization of undesirable practice without saying why it's undesirable. We
Right.
should probably say, the court should probably say, due to its potential for conflict of interest,
There we go.
acceptance of gifts and discounts by employees.
Is it undesirable practice?
It's discouraged, yeah.
How about
Can create, or just say, acceptance of gifts and discounts by employees may create a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Instead of this sentence?
Yeah, it's explaining why we're considering it
So,
undesirable.
board, since gifts, since the acceptance of gifts and discounts by employees,
Think of other sources.
not just by employees, right, because we're covering multiple groups here. Is it
They're all
really the employees?
It's all,
this is the employee section.
This is all
Cover
employees.
You have a different
It's
section.
not.
Before the five.
You guys haven't had this.
mm-mm,
Yeah, roll.
twos.
By employees can create conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. Create a conflict of interest.
The board, the board,
I think it's fine.
Did we go into the?
I'd like to say the board hereby regulates the acceptance of gifts and discounts by employees as follows.
Well, that
That's
has
in there.
authority and not purpose, but.
Okay, that considers the acceptance of gifts and employees. Strike that. The acceptance of gifts and employees by employees shall be, you don't say shall be regulated as follows. All right, it's fine.
Yeah, you're trying to get rid of undesirable practice, right?
Yeah.
But,
That's fine. Does that meet your objection?
That's fine. It's much better than where it was.
I know we define in the administrative regulations the level, but on the policy, we're describing the gifts and honorariums. There are some examples, for example, with the holidays quickly approaching, I know it used to be the practice that our PTO would buy the staff a gift of appreciation, and very often that was about $25. Could have been a gift card, but could have been something else as well.
It's still a gift, and it should be regulated in the regulation. We're not saying no gifts, we're just saying gifts require regulation. That's why I just think the first thing to the board is, the board shall regulate the acceptance of gifts and discounts by employees. No.
yeah, make it simple.
Up in the top.
It says it considers, where it's in the first, and of course, oh, sorry. Where it says considers, yeah, starting there, the board regulates the, right?
Yeah.
And then put them by employees back in.
And keep by employees?
Yeah.
I mean, because so I would say most of these elementary school classes give their teachers a gift at the holidays here. And collectively, I mean, people, we put in money at the beginning of the year. It's going to be more than a $25 gift card, right? It's going to be substantially more than that typically. So, I mean, and that's one of the things is that for a teacher,
You take 2 weeks.
it's, 25 times each individual student would be one thing versus $25 for an for an entire classroom gift. Like, that's the things, we just really need we don't want to set any of our staff up to violate a policy that we know is, unless we, I don't know if we
Does
are
that
really looking
become-
to restrict.
So
Yeah.
conceptually, just
Yeah.
thinking conceptually,
Right,
do we think that that's not acceptable? Do we think that that's acceptable because it's less than the threshold per contributing family?
right.
In which case, we have to put something in the, aggregate gifts, we have to put something in the AR about aggregate gifts like that.
Right, class gifts. type.
Or do we really want that not to happen at all?
What, for people
Not to give their.
it'll go
teachers
underground, I mean, you'll never be,
gifts. Right, it'll still happen.
We'd never be able to police it.
No, and we don't want to set people up to violate
Right.
policy or regulations. Yes, I
Well,
don't
so
want
then the AR needs to have some concept of aggregate gifts is
Right,
more acceptable somehow than an individual gift. Aggregate gifts of larger value versus an individual gift of larger value.
and $25 is pretty low.
It's the same per student, right? $25 per student, per family.
So it's a
And that-
$500 gift.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's by the way, one of the problems you're trying to create, solve here is the fact that everybody will then feel pressure. PTO saying, okay, everybody, it's $25 a head to give the class gift this year. That's what the school board says we can give without, so we're all gonna get $25 now per head.
Right. Well, I mean, like, just with my kids in elementary school, like, at the beginning of the year, we all put in $20 for class parties and teacher gifts. I mean, that's where, and then it's up to the classroom parents that determine how that money is allocated. And I've been a classroom parent the last 2 years, so like, I'm looking at how many violations of the policy that I have committed, if this policy had existed then. So it's a matter of, I don't know, I mean, like, I don't think, I think that getting it to the point is we don't want to see favoritism because someone comes in and buys the teacher, a $500 gift, this one individual parent. I'm not sure if that's happening frequently as it is. I mean, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And
I think
I don't-
can't gather that off the
Right.
appearance of, or actually the actual.
Right, and so is that the problem, are we having that problem frequently or infrequently? Do we know? I said, do we know? I mean, it's
As far as
underground already,
coming to
right?
our-
Yeah,
To our attention in HR, no, but,
right,
this is a policy that I discussed with new teachers during new teacher induction, and of course, they want to do things right, and they ask the question, well, what's a gift of a nominal value? Is
right,
it $25? Is it $50? Is it $100? So I think when we were looking to revise this policy, that's one of the things we're trying to close the loophole on,
right.
as far as
I
identifying.
think what we're trying to
what
get
is-
at is not so much the dollar amount maybe, but more is when is it a conflict of interest for the employee to receive it?
Right,
And that's what's not actually in the AR.
yeah, that's what,
I think, so for example, in exchange of the amount of gift or discount or whatever it might be, that there's a gain for this, whether it be academically, whether it be in sports, activities, whatever it might be, that those are the things that we're really trying to get at.
And a class gift, to me, is inherently not a conflict of interest. You're not favoring any child as a result.
Right.
Where if XYZ architect wanted to take me out to dinner
right,
at the Capitol Grill, hoping they get the business,
that's a much
prohibited.
bigger.
I mean, I would never accept that,
Right.
but I think that's what it's getting at.
Yeah.
Right, that's the concern,
Like a holiday gift, homeroom parent gift.
right,
But there are innocent experiences, for example, when teachers go to a conference or workshop, there might be a vendor hall, and just due to gaining interest, they might ask, put your business card or put your name on, and you can win a prize at the end. Some of those prizes are
Oh, nice.
definitely about $25. Sometimes they're in the nature of a free iPad or
TV.
a TV. Granted, I don't know that the teacher feels pressured or is even able
in a position that it matters
to compromise,
Right.
right? But it's just a different experience to where,
Yeah, but it's not fair.
Hmm.
yeah.
Right, yeah,
Right, I mean, if you're in a position that has the ability to make decisions,
right.
But let's take it to a different level. What about gratuities, gifts for bus drivers? Where sometimes they do make decisions, or could make decisions to
Yeah.
change a bus route, to make stops. And the amounts may be de minimis even by what we've defined here. It's just something, again, and then when we read the AR, it says that they're supposed to report them, and I think that goes back to what somebody said, to their supervisor, and I believe the phrase was, "We'll drive the money around," reporting, so.
Well, that's on the ground now.
I know,
I mean, the holidays,
right.
a lot of parents will give the driver.
Again, I just want to
Something.
have,
Drivers gift cards every year, so, yeah.
Or even my personal cell phone provider, for my personal cell phone, just because the fact I'm an educator gives me a discount of
Right.
6 to 10%.
Right,
All I have to do is verify that, yeah, I work for the school district, and I get that, but I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, that's more than $25 a year. I'd be violating the policy by accepting that discount.
yeah, I mean, we don't want corruption, like, that's what we're trying to get to, right? Like, we don't want our people to be corrupt, so is this policy gonna actually.
Yeah, but that's where I think we're trying to define, like, so what is the
Right.
Yeah.
conflict, where is the conflict of interest? Like, is that a conflict of
For your
interest? To me, it
personal
is.
cell phone, to
Exactly.
me, that's not. But if- But,
Like, you're gonna
you
go
know,
first.
if you were in a position to advocate, well, the district should use Verizon and only Verizon,
Well,
or whatever, I don't know who it is, but
Exactly.
then that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, okay, nowhere in this policy or area, I think we clearly define what that is. And I think that's what is actually needed in the wording right now. So what clearly defines a conflict of interest by an employee, by a school district employee, and the receipt of gifts or discounts?
Are you saying, what we are saying? Well, we're saying that any acceptance of a gift or discount of a consumer nature or nominal value, any gift or discount other than that is a conflict.
But it really, so I think the point is that it isn't about the dollar value.
How are you, that not only, okay, well, let's think about that.
How about, you know,
How
how
would
will
you-
you the influence?
Who's gonna make the judgment call whether or not somebody's, I mean, you could add language to say, because there's no practical way to tell whether, I mean, somebody might be influenced by, you know, some person may not be influenced one bit by a $100 gift, but somebody else could be completely influenced by a $20 gift. So, how are you gonna get inside somebody's head and decide what's a conflict? So maybe you could put language in there that says, since, you know, since you can't, in order to avoid having to, you know, independently determine the level of influence that would constitute a conflict of interest for a particular employee, the board is establishing uniform limitations on gifts and discounts. That's kind of what you need to say. What you say? Let's look at the policy we did on federal discounts. We didn't say, federal government didn't say, you can't say something that's gonna influence you. They said, you can't take a gift more than X. Where was that?
Travel reimbursement, 626, that's all.
26. You know, now that I have a better sense of what you're looking for, we can take this policy back to the drawing board if you like.
Yeah.
But that's just a travel.
Yeah, it's
that's
just
travel
reasonable,
numbers.
it's
That's
just,
not-
yeah, it's just travel
Yeah.
reimbursement.
I guess the questions that I would have for you before we take this back to the drawing board is, A, do you want there to be a threshold by gifts that can be accepted? Do you want change to different standards applied to aggregate gifts as opposed to individual gifts? And the third one is, do you, in addition to conflict of interest, do you care about the fact that, you know, parents and others may feel pressured into giving gifts and you don't want to encourage them to feel pressured? I don't know if that's something you care about or not. So if you can give me some guidance there, we'll take this back to the drawing board.
So for me personally, I think just under the AR, it'd be nice to maybe perhaps, I would agree, I don't think you can clearly define what is a conflict of interest or to who has a conflict of interest based upon a nominal amount, whatever it might be. But maybe perhaps some guidelines in regards to what that might be. So for example, whether it be contracts, grades, bus routes, whatever it might be, you know, how does the conflict of interest be shown as it pertains to gifts and discounts?
Okay, but the more
I feel like there's-
you make a subjective standard, you will, first of all, you'll be putting somebody in a situation that's very intense, and if you make it won't be enforced uniform, it can't be enforced uniform, if you make a subjective standard. Plus, it'll take up an enormous amount of time. I don't think you can, I've never seen a conflict of interest policy for any institutional organization that didn't have an objective threshold. Not to say one doesn't exist, we could look, we can see if there is one, but, I mean, I'm happy to go into, you're not the first institution who's ever faced this issue. I mean, colleges, universities, they have it, every government has it, other school districts have it, you have it, you're all bound by the Ethics Act.
Okay.
Well, the Ethics Act says that you can't vote on a contract more than $500.
Well, they just add $500 now. Again, I don't know, maybe an influence on some people, but not others. So there is some objective standard, otherwise you can't enforce it.
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
Without, unless you want to establish, as the state has done, a district ethics commission.
No, thank you.
thank you.
I do want an objective amount, and
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just trying to add in some aspects in terms of what does it look like when there is a conflict of interest, or how is that determined in terms of administration?
Okay, so.
Is it technically a conflict of interest? Is that the right term for a situation where, let's say, a family gives a teacher a gift or discount in order to gain favoritism for their student? Like the teacher isn't necessarily benefiting personally from, I guess they are. They're benefiting personally, financially from an act in their official capacity. That's really what a conflict of interest is, right? Personal benefit for an official act.
Yeah, but there's teachers exercise discretion with respect to students
Yeah.
routinely. So, are you going to be more, are people going to be a little more tempted to cut somebody a slack when they're, that their Christmas gift made it that night? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's at the heart of this policy in the R for me, at least, in terms of saying that what we're trying to do is not to have people being coerced in decision making based upon gifts and discounts.
Right.
Yeah.
And for our parents not to feel like when they talk to each other, oh my God, you gave what to this teacher? So I'm gonna go out and do this.
that's gonna happen anyway. We live in Upper Delaware.
I'm jumping off sides here, but I have some experience here as a parent.
So in some cases, some of our sports teams, we have coaches that volunteer at the end of the year. Some of them get a fairly nice gift card
Yeah,
from
that's-
the booster.
That's another thing.
So if they're a volunteer,
And that's,
that's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it?
If they're non-employee volunteers,
Am I getting paid? How many?
they would not get, this would not apply to the non-employee volunteers.
oh, so
And this would also apply for like
that's true. At least
whatever
they make it
Steve gets
accessible.
Brooke for the holidays or birthday gifts or anything like that. This is gonna be.
Policy says we can do it.
We should have said the policy was superior to, yeah.
In order to
Subordinate to
my
the other
application,
issue.
Not all.
and in order to make it, I think I've gotten
How much
sufficient
time's your salary?
to go back to the drawing board, so if you want
Yeah,
to account for
I mean, it's just,
This is hard.
This-
like, $25
Let us
seems.
know what best practices.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to
Yeah,
institute a gift span.
I know one district that applied a policy of
Right, that's a gift span. We can have a gift span, but that's
and then
pretty.
PTOs and the HSA said, you know what, that worked for us because people would come to us and say, who are we supposed to give, what's the recommended
Yes.
gift? It's like,
Not
are we supposed to tip the concierge at the,
Yeah, well, then they can put,
But
the
that's-
PTO can put their money directly into
Yeah.
actually making things happen.
they said it was easier, they said it was easier to enforce.
But can I give a recommendation? Can we maybe perhaps move the policy board and just have the AR come back to the drawing
Let me
board?
look at the policy. Oh, yeah, let's look at our policy.
Yeah, with those changes.
I'm
It
fine
sounds
with
like
changes.
it's more than.
No, I think there's a lot in the policy that's.
Yeah, I'm not so sure, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think we probably just
I
keep
think
them
we need-
together, so we'll see what the
That's
AR
fine.
looks
I mean, I
like.
need to tweak the purpose.
There's
of
no-
it too, because if they're gonna handle their-
It's not going into effect for this month anyway, I haven't seen it on here, so. So this is those
It's
back.
stupid to be
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just don't want to put your employees in a situation where they have to refuse gifts or
honest. And in that district, the bus drivers.
or have to lie about it. I don't want to lie about
Can
it.
they shake hands with them, wishing them happy holidays?
Well, you shouldn't the driver should be coming off the bus and parents should be getting out, so.
True. Well, could be an
Do it through the window.
Could be an envelope with the kid.
Besides-
Yeah, you send it with your kid, that's what you do. Kids sign the card. Okay, all right, so 322 is coming back. I'm calling it my employee corruption policy. All right. 324, personnel files. Well, the policy's pretty,
Yeah, I like to,
Yeah.
we'll see the policy.
yeah, so.
The one thing I would like to sort of see in policy is maybe identifying that the personnel files really are district property. I think a lot of times employees mistakenly believe that it's their personnel file. But when it comes right down to it, it really is the district's personnel.
Well, it's the district's file, it just happens to be about
Yeah.
that.
No, I
agree with you,
that.
I agree with you, yeah, so.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Well, when you start out right before the first sentence, they say, personnel files of the property of the school district.
I put that under delegation of responsibility. Just as a separate sentence, just like that. Not under purpose. You disagree with that?
is that maybe authority?
Authority is
I
about,
was
you
gonna
know,
say-
why does the school board have the,
I would say personnel files of the property of the district, comma, therefore, orderly operations of the district requires.
That works too.
That's how I would. that's
really?
how I would-
That's why we're required to maintain a personnel file, because of the property of the district?
No, maybe so. All right, move it to, what would be an authority then? Or, okay, delegation of responsibility, maybe we put it.
Just a separate sentence at the end.
Delegates establishment of official personnel record. Including their personnel file, with the understanding that district personnel files are the property of the district. No, after the
Right here?
last very end, at the very end of the sentence.
Oh, okay.
With the-
Personnel file.
Is this all new? This there?
The area.
Yes, contains a lot of what used to be in the policy.
Work now, so
This is middle, this is middle policy.
Yeah, that worked for me.
when we talk about files, are we talking about physical files, or are we talking electronic files? I mean, obviously, at one point, it was literally a filing cabinet and things in envelopes.
Do you think it's important to state, to say that?
So, I mean,
Whether it's electronic or not?
I think we should stick that in the regulation.
right, I'm saying the reg, yeah.
Or even in the reg, I'm not sure it's important to say, to declare how it will be maintained.
And we need a definition of personnel files in the reg.
The second paragraph, information to be placed, is that an exhaustive list?
That's why we didn't define it. Because
I don't think it's an exhaustive list, but I can't immediately come up with something else. But do we want to say includes but is not limited to?
Yeah, it would be, that's why I think we need to define what's a personnel file. I mean, letters of reference aren't in here, for example.
Right.
Okay,
Undergrad, like diplomas and transcripts, but they don't have letters of reference. Disciplinary information isn't in here.
That's what I was thinking, I'm like,
Yeah,
where's the disciplinary stuff? Yeah.
Accommodations,
Mhm.
letters from the superintendent telling what agrees.
Yeah, it already says personnel files should be maintained and destroyed by ordinance. And that's where, you decide whether it's physical or electronic, or whatever. I don't think we need to say it in here.
Yeah, I think we
Can't
can
open.
put it in the definition of personnel.
So the definition will go in the AR.
Yeah, I think so. We can
I would suggest that the medical records line should be below the paragraph below it.
Yeah, we agree.
Yes.
Can I also suggest under the appeals section, instead of including the minimum data that we're requiring, just to add a form so that we can attach it to the administrative regulation?
The form ended up in the file. Seriously.
I said that, so I'm just,
Right.
Yeah.
they just need, we're not exactly confirming the data.
Right.
Good. And for appeal.
The same thing, by the way, under employee access for the
Right.
things that they don't have the right to examine, is that an exhaustive list?
We'll check that. And it's also subject to CBA too.
When employees are inspecting their personnel file, the last paragraph under employee access, are they allowed to make copies of things in the file?
They are, yeah.
It does not say so.
Well, when we give them access, that's what I mean, do they come in and look at it, or do we email them their, how do we give them
Well,
access?
it's in the presence, it's in the presence,
They have to come into the AR.
They need to look at, we saw the physical files, not electronic yet. So they have to look at it in the HR office. But many of the CBAs do have language that permits them to receive copies. So it's sort of like the CBAs, but we can include it in the policy to be consistent.
And we'll put in a charge page.
so they are come back. Is that what's happening?
All right. So I think we're okay with the policy for first reading.
Yep.
Because the AR needs to obviously come back, add forms, check if it's also lists, all those things. But I think the policy is okay itself, right?
Yep.
Okay. Very thankful for first reading. All right, 3:30 overtime.
So my only question on the policy is, in the very last section, it says that a CBA or employment contract will override, if there's a conflict, will override policy. What if it turns out that the CBA is not in compliance with applicable federal law, as mentioned in the authority? Is it really always the case that an individual contractor or CBA has policy?
It's my understanding the CBA can't violate law.
Right, I mean.
So even if it's written in there, they can't.
It does federal
There's
law
State or
trumps.
federal.
Yeah, there's a clause typically in all CBAs, an incompatibility clause But if they're,
Yeah.
something is incompatible, it's the law that governs.
Covers, yeah. So
Yeah, okay,
it's
that's-
law, CBA policy in this situation,
Okay, so this language is fine.
in no overtime situations.
I just want to make sure this language would
Right.
give them the authority.
Well, we're going to say shall control provided the agreement does not violate federal law. Does not violate applicable law.
It doesn't hurt to add his line.
Killing Mark Stone.
So at the end, there, add that?
You just say provided the agreement, provided the agreement or contract is not violated federal law.
Yes, sorry. I'm looking at the
So,
AR,
in the AR, are these 5 terms, is this, straight out of the Fair Labor Standards Act? Or is
Yes.
there anything do we have any control over any of these terms?
Well, we can, every time without anybody's approval, I mean, there's no requirement in federal law that everything be approved.
Okay.
But we would, the rate of pay is not negotiable.
Right.
Hourly, 40 hours is not negotiable. Or 2, 3, and 4 are all minimum. 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all minimum required by FLSA.
Okay, so I'm fine with that. The AR.
Okay.
Now, for our current practice
Thank
for
you.
number 1, superintendent,
Attended.
business administrator, and director of HR are authorized to approve overtime.
Okay.
In
so
case
we need to
somebody's
change-
out of district or can't be reached.
Okay, so we can change that.
I don't know that we ensure that the employee's immediate supervisor has approved.
No.
Employee.
So I would feel more comfortable taking that out.
Superintendent. Superintendent.
We often will consult with them.
I would
but
take
not all the
out
time.
immediate supervisor.
So supervisors do not actually have to sign off on overtime currently?
Well, they probably have to recommend it, right? But they wouldn't have.
They would recommend it.
To
They
authorize
could.
it.
Their
That's right, and
transportation
that's-
director would recommend it to Brendan.
But they
Or
can't.
or facilities, which is,
Right. Okay.
they would recommend it, but it isn't always approved.
Right.
Sometimes we juggle.
So what do you want this to say, Tom?
No overtime shall be scheduled or worked without the prior approval of the business administrator, superintendent, and HR director.
Do you mean and or?
Or.
Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's the super abbreviated and, perfect. All right,
That pretty much covers our current practice.
practice, okay.
And we're happy with current practice, just to be clear.
Yeah.
All right, are we good with 3:30? See if we can get some more. All right, so that's first reading. Now it's the
Wait, just to make sure, Tom, under number 2, do you need to change that language as well, where it says the immediate supervisor and business administrator?
The immediate supervisor.
Would that be the same language?
Yes, I think it would be.
Do you need that? If that has to be approved?
Wait,
Yeah,
yeah, wait.
support staff contract is a little different in that it's worded as 80 hours over a 2-week period of time. Is counted as overtime for them.
I'm just concerned about the supervisor
The
and business
supervisor
administrator
aspect we
language
can
in number
change
2.
too.
Yeah, so we have 2 things to discuss here. I think that supervisor administrator language is not needed in number 2 unless it's straight out of somewhere else, but
Right, because it's talking about approval in number 1.
because it's already covered in number 1.
Yeah.
No,
When
that's,
It's actually-
approved.
It's actually covered by the collective bargaining agreement. I thought.
Probably.
Yeah, so I would agree, just strike it since we've already covered it in number one. So,
So just when approved,
yeah.
for time worked in excess of.
Right.
Yep.
You can even drop one approved.
We could do that, yeah.
Except for the words I But, okay, so Tom, what is this, what does it say? in there?
Support staff, it's 80 hours over a 2-week period of time.
but it's,
But that's Trump. None of this language applies, according to the policy, none of this language applies if it conflicts with the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
What you don't want to do is put what's in the collective bargaining agreement in there,
Yeah.
then negotiate your next collective bargaining agreement, because you're now, first of all, you made it.
Right.
What's the practical implications of the 80 hours over 2 weeks versus 40 hours in a week?
I'm sorry, you're asking.
What's the difference? What's the meaning? How does it, I mean, I understand the difference in the words. What's the difference in practice?
Somebody might work, say, 36 hours 1 week and 44 hours the second week,
And then we don't do
and they're paid a straight time.
Okay.
I think the Ken's point, we just leave the language.
bus drivers can,
Yeah.
I see the look on your face.
I'm going to follow up with that one.
Okay.
I think we can move forward.
All right,
Yeah.
we're good with 3:30, so it's first reading of policy, and we reviewed the AI to come back with, we reviewed it and approved it today,
Yep.
so, okay. I think we might have one more time.
I made the changes, though, so you just want to just bless it.
Okay, let's look at that real fast then, and then we
To
can,
what?
006.
We stopped, just so I know, at 3:31.
Okay, and then you have the changes, and you say whatever, so if I pull it up new, or am I going to reload board docs?
You have to.
Rather than reload that page.
Oh, good, I just reloaded the, yeah.
Yeah.
It's board docs, I remember now. What?
Representation.
Does that reflect the change?
Representation, yes.
Misspelled.
It's just not representation.
Oh, I see.
Nice and concise, You aren't missing a space after the period.
Something here is, we should start just with district, correct?
No,
No, 4 district students. There should be capital F. Capital F is.
Oh, there's no, that F is gone.
Yeah, that's
There you go, that's
Yep.
districts.
no, it's-
And at the end of that sentence,
no,
it's
it should be,
space.
it should be a space, capital F.
Yeah, and same thing for the next one.
Oh, it's a new center?
Yeah, versus it used to be something.
You need the space.
Once you,
before that.
once you accept the changes, then you.
Yeah, I'll be able
you
to
can
see the
make it
spaces
pretty
and stuff, yeah.
Just go back to the first read.
Yeah, this is about to first read. All right, we're okay with? So, okay. I might, just so you know, what public participation is defined in hearing of members of the public right here. I might actually just copy and paste that sentence back up where you define public participation, so it's defined exactly the way in those places.
It's duplicated somewhere?
Hearing of members of the public, there's a whole section,
Right.
it says public participation is limited to district residents or district taxpayers.
Oh, yeah, we don't want that to be.
So, as I said, even if it's duplicated, it needs to be exactly duplicated, so.
And, you know, just not, I'd rather not miss it later.
so. We're still So we're not going to get to everything on the agenda today.
Nope.
Unless there's something that we need to, I think we can go to community input and,
Can I make one last
Yeah.
suggestion? This
Yeah.
is a small piece. Under participation in board meeting, it says, as we define board meeting, we just say board meeting is defined under this policy, but just to correct it to say under this local board procedure. If we want to be consistent, we got rid of the other policies.
I don't care about that.
Where we define board meeting, go down after participation, under the bold setting participation. Go down, yeah. That's a small piece.
It's way down.
Keep going. Go. Keep going.
Ah,
Keep going. It's the long procedure.
okay. Yeah, it's down.
Keep going. Right there, right there. Where it says under this policy. And the second,
What's the board meeting is defined under this policy?
yeah. The board meeting. I'll change that policy. That works.
we're gonna go back for a first
Then we're
reading.
gonna
We
go,
might
I
as
know,
well
why
get-
not?
Yeah.
That we can do anyway, that's not. Okay.
Under this, so it should say board, or procedure.
Local board procedure.
Local board procedure, yeah.
Does that sound good? Okay. All right, good. So, all right, so like every other committee meeting, we have community input. Let me get a couple minutes to run these.
Me first, Richard Washington. So I came to talk about 006, specifically the proposed limits on the first community input, limiting the topics. I see that you put back in that people could comment on presentations, but you still want it to be presentations and action items. So if, for example, I have a question about the teacher's contract or comment about that, and that's not going to be on the agenda probably until the night you vote, or unless it goes to a fact finder again or something like that and gets dragged out, you're telling me I can't talk about that until second community input. And it's not just, obviously it's not about me. I can stay late. But we all know lots of people with 2, 3 kids juggling sports, juggling homework, and it's hard for them to stay late for the second community input to bring up whatever. And there's many, many ongoing topics. Obviously, Field of Dreams would be one of them. So you are basically going to cut community input in half. I would ask you to think about, and by the way, I already communicated with Art and Dr. Yanni, and I appreciate that Dr. Yanni got back to me. I would ask you to think about, first of all, history. And this will be rhetorical because I need to use my 4 minutes, and I don't know if you're going to respond or not, but no board has done this in approximately 25 years. Maybe never, because I wasn't attending meetings before then. And Art and I kind of we started around the same time, so I'm not sure you know the history beyond 25 years either. But my point is, no board in 25 years felt the need to limit the topics at first community input. And I watched the policy meeting from November. I know you asked Ken, Ken, how many districts do it? Yeah, a lot of them do it. Doesn't mean the people are happy about it. But in Upper Dublin, that's the history. Then let's take a few steps up to the more recent history. At the policy meeting, Dr. Yanni suggested it, but at the same time, he was very perceptive, and he said he had a concern that this would not go over well with the public because there's a real trust lack. There's a lot of lack of trust. Some members of the public have a lack of trust. And that's very true. I agree with Dr. Yanni on that. And then more recently, there's been documentation, so you don't have to just take my word for it. We had many focus groups, superintendent search focus groups before Dr. Yanni was hired. And it wasn't just Anita Brister at the focus groups, but I did attend 2 of them. But without fail, number one topic that was brought up at those superintendent search focus groups was poor communication. We need to improve. Whoever the leader is that comes here needs to improve the communication. And one thing I specifically said at one of those meetings was communication includes dialogue. And that's already started with Dr. Yanni, so that's good. That's Dr. Yanni. That's not the board. The board hasn't made any changes so far as communication. So now tonight, you're saying, or today, I forgot it was the afternoon, my God, it's so dark in here. Today you're saying that maybe there'll be these additional meetings. Maybe there would be, well, there already are coffee with superintendents, maybe there would be special meetings, town hall meetings. That's all fine, but if those other meetings other than coffee haven't happened yet. So I don't know, I think what you're doing here is almost shooting yourself in the foot. If anybody really does have a goal of improving communication, then telling people what topics they can speak about isn't going to accomplish that. That's going to give you the exact opposite of your goal. And some of you did touch on the fact that when there are kind of the hot button issues, those shouldn't even be happening. They wouldn't be happening if other things were happening. And Dr. Yanni's doing his part. I don't know that the board is really doing their part, because people do want an opportunity to speak in front of the whole board. You know, you're kind of nebulous right now about these other meetings. If you have these other meetings, which we don't know that you will, are you all going to be there? The whole entire board? So I'll just end with this. The Field of Dreams is an open issue. We don't know how it's going to go. Right now, the community feels that every single board member probably is going to vote for it. Maybe one or two are rethinking it. We don't know, because nobody has said that. But that's why there's a difference between a coffee with Dr. Yanni, which I love, and I'll go to a lot of them probably. But that doesn't mean I, Anita Brister, if I want to talk about the teacher contract or the next tax increase or whatever, wouldn't want that opportunity to speak to the entire board. You're not going to get the entire board at a committee meeting. This is an example right here.
Thanks, Neva. Okay, since we have no other community members here, we can close the community input. I don't think there was any questions there. I think that we talked a lot about the issues when we discussed 006, unless anyone has any comments.
Well, I think we do need to follow through on other opportunities. We want to steer that, it's not that we don't want those conversations, we just don't want them first community input at legislative meetings.
Right.
So we need to make sure we give other opportunities for those comments to come.
Anything else?
I think maybe just a clarification in regards to the special meetings, Dr. Yanni, that you had envisioned if there was, for example, around specific issues. Are those meetings that you would want to see the full board be called to that table and have those meetings?
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, thinking Field of Dreams particularly, or, an issue of that magnitude.
And that's what I would envision as well, is around those particular topics where it's a hot topic thing that the full board would need to be present, that we would
Expect that.
be expected of us, and we would simply follow through on it as well. Besides that, I don't think there's another question.
All right, with that, we have our next policy meeting is not until January 28th. I know. We don't take off time during the summer, but we do in December. All right, so with that, we're adjourned.